For some of you, it's very early in the morning if you're on the West Coast at 7:30. So thank you for being here. Gosh, to really kick off your New Year week with the UAIM project. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And we've had a lot of great energy. So let's keep that going into 2021. Scott and Cello we do have Crystal with us. That's joined us with Steve from King County. So welcome, Crystal. And I think everybody else on the call is familiar names or faces. I guess raise your hand if you're new. But yeah, it looks like we've got a lot of the same crew. So that's great. And so Crystal, we'll give you a chance to kind of make introductions when you guys do your presentation, if that's okay. We've got King County's going to present some things they've been doing on their CIP planning efforts and long-range investment planning. So we'll do that as part of the utility sharing and kind of here in about 15 minutes or so. But we'll start with Cello and Scott on any just UAIM project updates that we need to be aware of.
Okay. Well, we've had quite a busy time, and believe it or not, the groups working on the workforce and organization culture worked through both weeks of the holidays and met and did a lot of work. So that was pretty exciting. So they're making progress on building maturity models for organization and for workforce. So it's been coming along quite well. And we hope that some of you might be also interested in these sort of a little bit less technical topics, because they will make a difference in implementation and getting buy-in and stuff like that. So we're really looking forward to that. And they've taken very strong lead, the utilities, on this. They have a core working group, and so it's coming along quite well. We've had a very good session on risk management, people sharing information and talking about models. So it's been quite a lot of activity. So we're going to try to pack it all into this Friday's 30-minute update. But just one more thing to add, I will have a conference call with WEF tomorrow to start seeing what their plans are for continuation and stuff like that. So a lot for continuing beyond the completion of the WRF project. So that's about all from me. Scott, anything you wanted to add?
No, there was a workshop that the asset management team held on digital asset management plans, and I think that we're leading up to an opportunity for this particular team to have a workshop that has a wider audience as well. Although there's great participation just with this team, but basically exposing others to those opportunities. So a real good year ahead for us, on this project, and this team has been fantastic. And I think that Mike is, I don't know if he's going to chime in now or later, just about Dan, per your agenda, regarding basically documentation and case studies and that kind of thing, or maybe you want to talk about that, Dan.
Yeah, Scott, and thanks for that. And I want to give Mike an introduction and kind of set the table for him and set the stage. So yeah, I want to give Mike about 10 minutes here to kind of share a little bit more about business process modeling and the support he has to offer. And then also, chance for you guys to ask questions too, because I don't know about you, but with the end of the year, we've had a couple of weeks and hopefully got some good rest and good breaks, maybe lots of good food, maybe a few too many drinks, whatever. And now it's kind of like, okay, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this again? So just as a reminder to kind of keep that end goal in mind, and Scott kind of hit on this, is that where we're going with this effort, collectively as a group, is to put together case studies. So we're each going to put together a case study of the improvement initiative that we've tackled. And many of you are, we're all working on different aspects of CIP planning or CIP delivery, or maybe both, to figure out how we can make improvements within our organization. And an important element to that is using the business process modeling concept and tools and approach as the mechanism to achieve those improvements. And we've already seen from several of you that you've got some good process models and some good documentation put together. And so we also want to get you connected with Mike as our business process modeling guru to say, hey, is there a way we can take what you've got and actually build a process model using kind of the standardized business process modeling, and then use that then to also move forward with whatever improvements you're making. And then, like I say, and Cello, correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline here, but I think by May, we want to be able to have these case studies, including these business process models in whatever form or fashion we have them, to submit those as case studies so that we can share with the rest of the utility world, some of the things we've been doing. So just kind of to recap, that's the end goal that we're striving for. And I guess with that, maybe open up if anybody has any questions around that, and then shift it over to Mike to he's put together a couple of slides just to share what he has to offer again, and just kind of help everybody remember, and then, encourage you guys to get connected with him and utilize him. So we'll open up for any questions on like the end goal piece and any comments on that, and then we'll let Mike take it away. All right, I think everybody's ready to hear from you. So go ahead.
All right, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Well, let me, hello to everyone. Some of you I've met. For those that I haven't met, looking forward to working with you. I'm accessible. I'll give you my contact information if you don't have it already. Let me know how I can help to meet those goals that Dan just outlined. And let me share my screen here. Scott, can you confirm you can see these?
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay. All right. So this slide really is, this first slide is what Dan just summarized for us. We, as some of you know, for newcomers, our mission is to build this repository of high quality utility business process models. And over the past couple of years, we've done this by working with utility partners just to help them get started, help them along. Maybe they have their own resources for modeling, but they are following this continuous improvement cycle that you've seen Cello and Scott and others talk about, and we've documented. We have a lot of resources to help support that methodology. And by resources, I mean things like videos and documents, descriptive documents. There's a whole repository of information like that you can draw upon. But we want to make sure that the models that we get meet certain criteria, and that by the end of this project, we can fold that into a big repository of these models that you and others can then reuse. And for that, we recognized very early on that people needed help. And here's where I can help you. We can help with developing the models that are of interest to you. You've already probably got a use case in mind. We want to help you along with that. understanding that methodology, both as-is models and to-be models. We want to get all the way through this cycle, at least to the improvements implemented phase, so that we can see the results of all the hard work that you've done, represented in those case study documents. I'm an expert in business process modeling and management, and in particular the business process model and notation, or BPMN standards, so I can help you with that, or help you get started with that. I even have training courses for it, so I've got a lot of information that we can provide you to help you get up to speed really fast. It's not hard. It's just a kind of barrier that you have to overcome. We can help with that. We're even getting to the level of modeling decisions. The whole process itself, of course, is driven by data and decisions. And in some of the efforts, we are drilling down into actual decision modeling. And I can provide expertise on that. And then curating the model. My mandate for the UAIM project is get all of these models in shape, put them into the repository, organize them well so that they can be reused. So this is our roadmap that will take us through, to May anyway. And I'm here to help. So, let me know how I can do so. Just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we've done. And this is not a complete list. This is a list of some of the people that we have worked with, including, the Minneapolis people with asset management and risk management, both with Portland Water and WSSC. We've done, financial processes for VCS in Denmark, business case evaluation, the group here, the CIP planning, that modeling seems to be going very well. The Grand Rapids report, if you've seen Cello's video, he goes into depth about this particular use case, a very interesting one where he used simulation in a very quantitative way. And at Louisville, the One Water shared services in Orange County, another popular one that we've talked about a lot in the past for replacement and repair of pump stations. And with Clean Water Services, Peter up there is working on some insurance processes, as well as a number of others. There are a number of processes he's working on. But again, this is a short list. The whole list has got a very broad range of business processes that we're capturing. And the process that we've gone through seems to work pretty well. We meet, we have a review meeting, we get organized around what the use case is, and then we help them along, making sure that we get the models expressed in BPMN the way we would like for the UAIM project, and then finally publishing those and publishing them as part of that use case study. We really want to get a number of use case studies out of the work that we do that can be reported elsewhere. We've already used the 5 or 6 or 7, I think, use cases that we've done so far quite effectively. So there's a lot of opportunity for interaction here, and it works quite well, and it's very efficient. I don't want to give the impression that it's hard or super challenging. It's just a matter of doing it. So between now and May, what we want to do is start a process of gathering these models, getting others engaged if you're not already. And this 5-step process is what we're going to implement. There's my contact information down on the lower right of this slide. And this week we're going to be bringing on board an assistant whose job is going to be to make sure that we're staying on track with this process. So, if you're not already engaged with us, then, just reach out. We will set up an initial meeting and identify goals and the processes that you want to work on, the resources, like who's the modeler? Do you need us to do the modeling for you? Do you have somebody in your own organization or a consultant that can do this? We need to identify who that is. Really nail down the use case that you want to focus on, because that's the 3 to 5 page document that we're going to produce at the end. And then just answer questions, why are we doing this? How are we doing it? What sort of tools do you have? Where are the documents to support the effort? All of that information we can talk about. And then we'll set up a model review meeting, and we'll look at those models that you have or maybe don't have but want to have. And we'll talk about how we're going to proceed, and set up any subsequent meetings that are required. So the end goal really is by April the 15th, or let's say April sometime, to have these models submitted for inclusion into the repository. We need to, again, make sure that they meet the UAIM project modeling guidelines. And then by May, submit a draft of a use case report. And it doesn't have to be a long, involved process. These are summary documents. So that we want to get sometime in May. And then by 1st of June, we will publish what's called the water sector value model, which is really the repository into which all of these models will, where all these models will reside. So that's the program. I guess I should stop here and check to make sure, if there are any questions that we need to answer.
Dan and Scott have their hand up.
Yeah, Dan, go ahead. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Great job. And that was really helpful. And I just want to share with everybody that, for us here at KC Water, you saw the DC Water presentation, they've been doing this for a little while. So you kind of got to see somebody who's been doing it for a while. We did just kind of our first business process models of our CIP process, in the last 6 months or a few months as we've been working through this. And we did step one with Mike. Zach Monroe's on the call. He's my guy that I've been working with, and developed our draft business process model. We actually took one of the models from the repository that was developed for generally CIP delivery that we shared earlier. And we just started modifying that to fit what our process looks like for CIP delivery. It's in a rough draft format. We shared that with a couple of our internal project managers to kind of get their reactions to it. So far, it's been pretty good. And our next step is to go to step 2 that Mike shared, of then getting that reviewed, engaging Mike and his folks and just getting it reviewed and, get some feedback and get it cleaned up to see, make sure we're meeting, it fits with those standards. So I guess I say all that just to say, no matter where you are in the process, if this is your first time, this project is your first time seeing business process models or even working with business process models, that's okay. I'm right there with you. And so, just start where you're at. And step 1, give Mike and his team a call, and they do a great job of helping just get it started. If you've already done that, then it was nice to get that outline and that timeline of step 2, 3, 4, where we're headed. So, with that, Scott, go ahead. And any other questions?
Yeah, I think Getachew and Kathleen are another example of how they're using that process, and a lot of others on the call. I just wanted to emphasize, Mike, something, which is that you're there to help train and support and all that. In the end, if you can think of the work that you do, is that everything that you do is really a business process, and that if there is, I think the desire, if you can afford it, if you have the resources, if you have the right skill set, identifying somebody like Dan just, talked about, who can basically work to develop the in-house capability. It's not about, forevermore you're going to be relying on Mike to do this for you, that you want to develop your own in-house capability to do this. So that's something that Cello and I and Mike are pushing, and we're getting some traction in some other groups too, where they recognize, this is something that we really need to have a skill set for. So just throw that out to you, Dan.
Jeff?
Yeah, very good. Jeff had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering what you're seeing as the scope for what we're preparing. We've spent a lot of the last year developing this kind of a structure for business case evaluation. Are you thinking of this as a narrower scope that we want to bring back? It's specific to other kinds of functions within the organization. The example list you had, Michael, goes a bit further. It covers a lot of different ground.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground. Yeah, I guess the important point there is that we're following the tracks that we have. So there are like this group and the risk management group are very focused on that area. So we expect a lot of progress in those areas. But then there's another track which was meant to be an opportunity for any utility, and there are a number of them, that that have a particular process they need to improve, and we want to be able to support those. So you saw in that list a number of various broad range of processes that people are working on. Clearly, we don't have infinite amount of time to work on each one of them. So some will be developed or more or less depending upon the needs of the utility. But we do expect that in these areas in which there's focus in track 2, that those models would be further elaborated. And I think we're seeing that. And, things like what Dan's group's doing, what DC Water's doing, what others are doing, getting pretty detailed, which is really good news because they're pushing around that improvement cycle. They're getting to a full cycle. Which is pretty interesting and impressive.
Great, thanks.
I just want to mention for people who are interested in there's a document which is a scope of work for year 2, and I'll put in the chat line the link to it, and it sort of explains the scope of work and what we're planning to do on a little bit more generic level, and then you can select. You will see that it answers Jeff's question in a bit of detail, and at the end of the day, we really want to make some improvements, right? And that's at the end of the day. So I will put in the chat line as soon as I find the link to the to this work plan for year 2.
All right, thanks, Jello. Any other comments or questions? We've got a few more minutes. Anybody has anything else for Mike?
I'll put my contact information in the chat window just in case it's helpful.
Well, maybe you guys have this all figured out, but for me, I got to say, I guess we've been approaching this, I say, a little more organically here. It's like we're making progress, but our project plan isn't maybe as well defined. I'll just confess that as what DC Water shared with us earlier. So it's just helpful, Mike, to have that. Hey, here's kind of a target timeline to shoot for. Here are kind of 5 steps to get there. And we've, I am confident we've made progress, which is encouraging, and we'll just have to gather up those materials and be able to put them together in a case study format, and like I said, follow through with a meeting with you to get finalized. So any other comments, questions before we go to our utility sharing with King County?
Dan,
go ahead.
Just one more quick one is that what we've found is that the business process modeling view that we wind up developing is a common way to share information. And it really has a value to be able to look at the business process and really talk from that. And we've had a bunch, as you know, over the last year or two, we've had some experience doing that. And it's been real effective where you kind of go through the flow, as well as the roles and responsibilities, and you identify, issues, decision points, and have discussion and that kind of thing. And it's around that business process model that you're able to have those discussions.
Yeah, let me just add, the one-on-one sessions are quite effective. So by all means, just get in touch. We'll do a 1-hour meeting. Doesn't even have to be that long. And they are quite effective, and we found them to be efficient.
Especially with teams, here we are, we can see each other face to face from across the country and share those things right on the screen. And so that's just been really, really powerful. So thank you, Dr. Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And,
I appreciate it.
yeah. And, Scott, you have a talent for like teeing up transitionary comments. So your comment about sharing process models and for it being able to help facilitate conversation, that's what we've been doing with this kind of sharing time that we've had with these sessions. And so today we've got King County with Steve Tolzman and Crystal Fleet who have joined us. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys and share with us, what you guys have been working on. And this is your time. And if we can offer up some comments, questions, or whatever, then we'll do that as well. So take it away.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Dan. And I'll share a screen here and do some, and ask Crystal to introduce herself. She's new to the group. And
There you go. It's on.
perfect.
Yeah, we can
There
see
we
it.
go. All right, great. So I've been participating for a while in the group. Steve Tolzman. I'm with the King County Wastewater Treatment Division in Seattle, Washington. And I work in comprehensive planning, and I focus on long-term capital planning largely. And participating in this group had me think a lot about our portfolio management process, which my colleague Crystal Fleet leads. So I was able to, and I asked, and Crystal was kind enough to join me today, and she's going to do most of the talking. So I asked her to introduce herself now to this group.
Hi, everyone. This is Crystal Fleet. I work with Steve at King County Wastewater. I've been at King County about 19 years now this month. Most of that time has been spent in capital project delivery as a capital project manager. Since 2019, I have been in charge of our portfolio management process for our capital program, and that's what I'll be talking about today.
Great. Thanks, Crystal. So we have, I think it's about 10 slides today. So this is pretty short, and I'd say it's very much overview. We don't have a lot of the detail. There's a bunch of detail behind all this, but today we're very much going to do overview, and it's in two parts. Crystal will take us through this portfolio management process, which Crystal has led to help the King County Wastewater Treatment Division develop its 6-year CIP. And then I just wanted to land on a couple slides on a long-term capital planning effort that I am leading, trying to work towards an investment strategy. And then hopefully we have some time for conversation afterwards. So we'll go back to Crystal for some slides on portfolio management.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So at King County Wastewater, we spend on average about $250 million per year on capital projects. And so in 2017, we decided to pilot a formal approach to prioritizing all of that capital program. And so we adopted a portfolio management approach to give some structure around how do we prioritize that $250 million per year. And the overall objectives of using portfolio management for us was really to align our capital investments with our overall strategy as an organization. And to do that, we also use objective criteria to evaluate all of those different project ideas. We really wanted to incorporate transparency. Before we took this approach, it wasn't really obvious to people outside of the organization why we picked what projects we chose to do. So big key here is incorporating transparency. The other thing is that we want to use data in our decision making. So using data to make decisions, not making decisions in a vacuum anymore. And then finally, we want to be able to demonstrate the value to the general public of those capital investments of the $250 million per year. So our approach to portfolio management starts with maintaining a comprehensive inventory of all known project needs, project ideas. Before we went down this road, we had floating out there in the organization about 15 to 20 different strategic plans, all with project ideas. So the first step is really consolidating all of those ideas into one comprehensive inventory. Then, in order to evaluate projects, we need to sort them into categories so that we're evaluating like for like. So I'll talk about categories on the next slide. Then we evaluate all the project ideas using objective criteria. So we try to make this criteria measurable. So in the instance of where we're evaluating asset management projects, we're looking at asset age, asset condition, things that can be observed and measured. And then we want to allocate resources. So this is both money and people. And we do that allocation based on our overall strategic goals as an organization. Finally, once we've allocated those resources, we need to balance the individual projects. So we look at the project spending curves, how do they fit in with the available revenue from our rate, and we make decisions. Do we delay something in order to move ahead something that's more higher priority? And then finally, one key aspect of this is really driving decision making down to the lowest appropriate level. So we've had a pretty formalized project management, project delivery approach with gates at different phases of projects. But before this process, we'd have all levels of management in those decision making meetings. So we'd have our division director getting into weeds on technical project details. When we took this portfolio management approach, we sort of stratified the decision making so that the management team, division director are focused on the strategic decisions, whereas we're pushing the nitty gritty detailed decisions on projects down to the supervisor level. So next slide, Steve. Okay, slide 4. So these are our categories. So when we talk about evaluating projects like for like, we do sort all of our project ideas into categories based on the main driver for doing the project. So we have 6 categories, the first of which are projects that are driven by asset age or asset condition or obsolescence. And so we call that our asset management category. It's subdivided into subcategories, one for the vertical assets. So that's the asset management plants category. So this is equipment at our treatment plants and pump stations. And then the asset management conveyance category are linear assets. So these are just conveyance pipeline primarily. We have quite a bit of hydrogen sulfide corrosion in our system. So that category is mainly comprised of those types of rehab projects. Next up is our regulatory category. These are projects that are driven by a regulatory mandate. So currently we're under consent decree with the EPA for our CSOs. So the majority of that category is comprised of CSO projects. We also try to recover as many resources from our wastewater stream as possible. And so projects that are focused on resource recovery are categorized in one group. This includes projects that are primarily driven by energy savings, but also comprises projects for recovering biogas, biosolids projects, recycled water. So all having to do with recovering resources. Sometimes we have projects that have a payback. It might be something where we're wasting chemicals, or maybe it's something that is very labor intensive for operations. So those projects are categorized in something that we call operational enhancement. Usually these have some sort of financial incentive around them or a real labor incentive. It's not a large category, but these are things that have a payback that don't really fit in anywhere else. Seattle's a growing region. We have a lot of projects focused on increasing the capacity. This is both in our conveyance system, installing larger pipes and pump stations, as well as increasing capacity at our treatment plants. And then finally, we live in a seismically active region here in Seattle. And we have, in 2017, we did a pretty large study looking at vulnerabilities to seismic and other natural hazards. And we have a list of projects resulting from that study. And we categorize these in the resiliency category. So these are projects both to lessen the impact of a seismic event or other natural disaster, as well as increasing redundancy for key processes so that we can start up quicker in the event of a natural disaster. Okay, next slide. Okay, so who's involved in our portfolio governance? So I mentioned before, we're trying to stratify the decision making. So ensuring that the right people are making the right decisions. And so we do this with a governance structure. And it starts with our strategic direction. This is comprised of mainly our management team at Wastewater, but for this purpose, we call them our definition board. So they're the people who are setting the goals, setting the strategic objectives for our capital program. For instance, right now, our main strategic objective for the next decade is having to do with our asset management. So we're making a big push in replacing assets that are old, obsolete, or in poor condition, as well as the CSOs. So they're saying these are our focus points, for the 6 years, for the next decade, and setting our strategic goals for our capital program. Then we get into the detail. So we've got all of these hundreds of different project ideas, but somebody's got to sort through what those projects are and how they help advance the strategy. So we do that with teams of subject matter experts that we call our category ranking teams. These are the people that are looking at every single project request, every existing project, and looking at evaluating how those projects stack up against the criteria. So for every category, we have specialized criteria having to do with the drivers for that category. So for instance, in asset management, we're looking at the condition of the asset in the project request, and we're using our computerized maintenance management system to give us information on that. We're looking at whether or not the asset is obsolete. What are the impacts to the organization if the asset were to fail? So it's all criteria that we can observe, we can estimate, but we have subject matter experts that are very close to that work who are making the evaluation. So for asset management, the people on the team are our plant managers and our reliability engineers. So they're the people who know the data, know about the projects, and what they're going to do. So we've got all of this data, but data doesn't make decisions, people do. So the people that make the decisions about, okay, we've got all of this prioritization data, lots of numbers, what actually goes into our 6-year capital plan? So that is left to this board called the delivery board. This is comprised mainly of middle level managers within our organization. So they're people that tend to have lots of expertise, who've been here for a while, but are also not on the management team, but they are closer to the overall strategic goals. So they're kind of in that middle between down in the weeds and the loftier goals. So they're the ones making the decisions, using the data to decide what is in or out of the 6-year plan. I think that's all about them. So once we get a capital plan, we get appropriation, then we hand it over to the project oversight board. So once a project is in delivery, we do have phased gate check-ins at the end of each phase. So we have a check-in at the end of a planning phase, at the end of alternative analysis, at the end of preliminary design, where we check in with the project team. We give them guidance. We baseline after preliminary design. We also have a check-in after the project is completed, and all of that goes to the project oversight board. These are comprised mainly of supervisor level people in the organization who are familiar with project delivery. So you have project management supervisors, engineering supervisors, permitting supervisors, people who understand what it takes to deliver a project. And they're the best able, in our opinion, to give project teams advice, help them really kind of check out whether or not the project schedule, project budget are adequate to deliver the scope of work. And then the oil that helps this machine run is my group, the Portfolio Planning and Analysis Unit. It's a very lean group, so it's comprised of myself and one business analyst who works on prioritization type of data, and we have a finance analyst who works both with me and our finance group and provides basically the bridge between this capital prioritization and the actual finance portion of it. And our objective is really to manage all the processes, make sure they're running smoothly and things get done on time, as well as provide decision-making information. So taking all that data, putting it into formats where the decision makers can use it to make their decisions. Okay, next slide. So how does this result in a budget and spend plan? So it's a really iterative process, and it takes from beginning to end about 18 months or so. So we have a two-year budget, so we get appropriations for 2 years, but at the same time, we set a 6-year spend plan. And it all begins with our sewer rate. So it's a really iterative process. We feed information into the sewer rate, and we also take information from that rate process. But our management sets our strategic goals, both for the capital program and for the sewer rate. We take that information. So I mentioned before, one of our main goals is asset management. So we answer questions like what would it take in capital projects to complete our highest priority asset management projects by 2030, and we create scenarios of what that would take, and like laying out project spend plans project by project to roll all that up into a capital program. That information then goes to our finance group. They create rate scenarios using that data. So if we're spending $300 million per year over the next 6 years, what does that translate into sewer rate? So that helps us develop what that rate plan is going to be. Then we submit the rate plan. And at that point, it's pretty much locked in. So we take that rate plan, what does it translate to available capital funding, and then we do the detailed project by project cash flow updates. This is where we get information about our existing projects and programs, what their projected spending are. We see if that fits in within our rate plan, and then we can layer on any new projects or programs that we have coming. And we balance that to our available both financial resources, and we also look at the available human resources, so both internal staff as well as consultants and contracting availability. Then we translate that into the capital budget. So now we've got detailed spend plans for every project. We can fine-tune our 2-year appropriation requests, so where are we going to spend the next 2 years, as well as lay out a 6-year spend plan. And so we start the inventory process in the summer before the budget year, and it culminates in a approved capital budget in the November before the year. So it's a kind of it's a long process, but it results in a pretty detailed plan for our capital program. I think I turn it over to you, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Crystal. Yeah, so I just wanted to use the segue of Crystal mentioned a couple times the the portfolio management is guided by the overall strategic direction, and that's it's so fundamental to how those decisions are made. So from a long-term investment strategy, this slide is busy, and perhaps it's busy on purpose because part of the point is there's more to do than Crystal also noted. About $250 million a year is the capital program funding. So looking at that $250 million a year, and then kind of taking a look back at our list of needs, if you will, somewhat summarized on this busy slide about what are our capacity needs in our regional wastewater system, our aging infrastructure needs and asset management. Our regulatory commitments, combined sewer overflow, Crystal mentioned. Also, we have expectations of nutrient removal requirements at our treatment plants. And Crystal also mentioned earthquake hazards and other natural hazards and the resiliency of the system to those. And then on the left-hand side of the slide, we just noting there some of the many pollution pathways and how our agency and our budget and the work we do interacts with those pathways. So all of that is in play as far as setting our strategic direction to go forward. I guess we didn't note it at all in the beginning or in the slides, but I'll just throw out a couple of metrics for anybody who's not familiar with the King County Wastewater Treatment Division, just from a context standpoint. We serve about 1.8 million people. About a third of the geographic area-wise, about a third of the system is a combined system. Therefore, about 2/3 is separated. On a dry day in the summer, we can see less than 100 million gallons of sewage a day. Today in Seattle is miserable. It's still dark. It's raining hard. I think we're working on our 4th inch of rain this year already. So 4 days, 4 inches of rain, pretty good, huh? So today we'll probably see 300+ million gallons of sewage at the sewage and combined sewage at the treatment plants. And King County itself, and I think Crystal could probably talk a lot about this, but we are an enterprise system within a general purpose government. So that I think that plays into some of these functions as well and how all this rolls out. And then King County finally is a wholesale wastewater treatment entity, and we serve 34 different municipalities, either special districts or cities. So all that context, lots of needs. How do we set that strategic direction for the long term in order to inform that portfolio process? And this gives just a little bit, it's an incomplete table and a bit, very high level summary. But right now through 2030, we see over $1 billion in asset management needs. Through 2060, a couple $1 billion in conveyance system needs, and that flows on. And there's things we're still populating. For example, the treatment plant upgrades for higher levels of treatment if nutrient removal is required. So again, you look at the billions there and the billions we're sorting out, and we're trying to assess how we would take about $250 million capital program annually and allocate those based on a strategic direction going forward, and trying to be as transparent as possible about that because we want to set that course. These are long-term capital intensive projects. We need to set that course for decades ahead. Our large capital projects can take us 6, 8 on the long-term timeline, 10 years to complete. So it's really important from a transparency standpoint, setting that direction to push it out there in that long-term sense. So we have that presented and revealed as these specific budget discussions on projects go forward. Yeah, and just finally, we are, these generally align, but not completely align with the categories that Crystal showed under portfolio management. But we've broken out these as our decision areas to support our core question on how do we, direct the public investment to the right actions at the right time for the best water quality outcomes. And then, we've broken that down into these 8 decision areas in order to help us work through this process. So for each of these decision areas, we are developing potential different investments, either a specific capital project like a treatment plant upgrade to a higher level of treatment, or potentially a more programmatic type activity, such as a pollution source control program. We have a current industrial waste program that has pre-treatment. Maybe we want to enhance that type of program to avoid getting certain pollutants even into our system in the first place. So a few examples there of the different areas we're wrestling with. But really, our goal in the end is to get that long-term blueprint for what the priorities are to help inform that portfolio process at the front end. All right, so that's our formal presentation today. I'll drop that slide there. Whoops.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Great work, Crystal and Steve. Thanks for sharing that. And that's a lot of familiar themes. So it's nice to hear I'm not alone, or we're not alone here in Kansas City. Yeah, some interesting things. So Scott, I think, had his hand up. And Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, fantastic job. You guys are great. Thanks for sharing. I found that governance slide very illuminating, where you're trying to drive decisions, down to the lower levels, which is pretty cool. One thing, just a quick question, and I know we're limited in time, is what kind of methodology or tools do you use on the prioritization side of things? You mentioned your team really facilitates that process, but what kind of tools do you use to prioritize?
Sure. So we worked with a consultant to customize they have a decision analysis tool that we customized for our process. And so it's a custom tool. I can share our consultants' value management system that we worked with. They're based out of Portland, Oregon. And so it's a multi-criteria analysis tool.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there, but we chose to work with our consultant, customize their tool.
Just Dan, one quick thing is, it would be great if you could, provide your presentation, on the chat here, because that was really very good and very useful to people. But that makes sense, Crystal, what you said.
And both Steve and Mike, send me a PDF of your slides, and I'll get that distributed out to folks. So we got one more quick question from Steve Sechrist. He presented last week. So go ahead, Steve. Or Steven.
Thanks. Yeah, Steve Sechrist from Gwinnett County, Georgia. Great presentation. I really think you've got a fantastic approach and strong ties, I think, to data, which is important, and to the financial side, and right into a rate plan, which I think is bold. I mean, a lot of times that can be driven by politics. So it's great that you have the technical side sort of driving that rate process, at your utility. That's fantastic. I had a question for Crystal. How does your planning group, you've got this small group of people working on this plan, how do you access technical resources when you need to make a decision, let's say, between a couple of different solutions to a technical problem? Like, you've got, any kind of process, there's technical decisions that have to be made to select one above the other. How does your group go about accessing that technical decision making?
Sure. So when it's a decision around relative priorities of projects, those technical people are on our category ranking teams. So they are people who are very close to the technical aspect of it. So for instance, Steve is in our comprehensive planning group. He is the program manager for our conveyance system improvements. So he's the technical lead on the conveyance system capacity projects, right? And so he sits on that team making those prioritization decisions between different projects. When we get into the project delivery, those people are assigned to the project teams themselves. So they're the ones on the individual projects making those decisions. And we have that governance structure with the project oversight board that are at the supervisor level really checking down those decisions. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, just to be a little more specific, let's say you had to make a decision between two different disinfection technologies like UV versus ozone or something. How would you do that?
Oh, so that would be done during the alternatives analysis phase in the project. So it would be that project team with the technical experts assigned to that project team making a recommendation the alternative technology, and they would be evaluating based on multiple criteria that's selected for that project itself, along with life cycle cost and other factors. And so they would work through all of those details. That would be then presented at Project Oversight Board with a recommendation, and Project Oversight Board would either accept that recommendation or ask the team to go back, look at details more.
Right. So there's sort of a BCE process embedded within that.
Yes.
Got
Yep.
it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great question. Well, we just got a couple of minutes left, and I think Cello had a comment he wanted to make. But yeah, if you guys have additional questions that this prompted, I'll send out the slides, and yeah, feel free to connect with Steve and Crystal via email. I'll make sure to include Crystal's email in that follow-up as well. Steve and Crystal, or I think it's maybe more for you, Steve, is one kind of final question for me is, how do you see this UAIM approach helping you guys? And like, what are your next steps as a team?
Yeah, I'm caught in the professional dilemma of the limits of quantification. I mean, I appreciate the business process and I appreciate cost effectiveness and all that. I find on our long-term strategy, we end up running head into a wall time and time again on our limits to quantify things, to really say, here's the decision that we should go with. And it turns, that's a challenge. So I appreciate, I think I appreciate this group a lot for what you said, Dan. We're not alone. But I think that just seeing all these different approaches to the BCEs just helps ensure your process is robust. B, brings you new ideas. Those types of things are absolutely helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Well, yeah, you along with everybody on the call, just to kind of circle back, encourage you to take those next steps. If you haven't had a chance to connect with Mike and he can be helpful with just laying out the business process to get you, to where you want to be, or even just seeing examples of what other folks are doing, with the library we've got, that's beneficial as well. So, Cello, it's 10:30. Bring us home, and I will say our next call is on January 18th, which I just noted is Martin Luther King Day. We are off that day, but I'm going to plan to participate in the call unless there's a lot of people that just can't make it or that day, just to keep things rolling. And if you have ideas on other topics or you want to present what you're doing, by all means, let me know and we can get you on the calendar for the next meeting. So, Cello.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and to King County folks and Mike. This was really good, and I just want to mention to Steve and to Crystal. I put in the chat line the link to our report for year one, which was completed in May of last year. And I actually work plan for this year from July to May of next year, May of this year. So there may be some things in there because I saw that your approach is very structured and transparent. And I think that these business process models, once you build them, aim also not only to map out the structure, but also to communicate the structure to many different people that you're involved. So if you have a minute, you can look at that, and we'd love to have you join us. The folks on the call come from utilities. They all share, different similar interests, and we'd like if you could, get engaged with our group. So that's all I wanted to say, Dan. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. All right. Well, very good. Well, unless there's any closing thoughts, we're a couple minutes over. We'll go ahead and wrap up, and everybody have a great week kicking off your 2021. So
Thanks,
Yes,
Dan.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Dan.
Thank you. Take care now.
Take care. Bye.